Hello, hello, hello. We are back with an interview this week. We're talking to Jess Ringgenberg, founder of ELIXR Coaching and Consulting and a Matrescence expert. You don't know what Matrescence is? That's okay. Neither did I, but you're going to learn all about it today. I'm Anthony Franzese. This is the Successful Working Parents podcast, where we learn from busy working parents how they're able to balance it all and still thrive. Next week, we'll be back with another movie review, Jingle All the Way, starring Arnold. So make sure you watch before next week. Anyway, on to the show. Welcome back to the Successful Working Parents podcast, the podcast where we talk to successful working parents. My guest today, she is the founder and CEO of ELIXR Coaching and Consulting. She's a matrescence expert, mother of two. Ladies and gentlemen, Jess Ringgenberg. Jess, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. So usually we kick off with a little background on your career, if you would share that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I built a career most recently inside the biotech industry. So over 10 years of motherhood, I really escalated quite quickly and robustly into leadership roles and worked inside of commercial execution and strategy. And so my last role before starting ELIXR was a Fortune 500 leader for a commercial sales team. So that's what I've spent a majority of my identity and careerhood, and now I get to be a builder. I've never been a builder before, and so it's been a fun 6 months of building a company.
Awesome. And you have two kids, right?
2 boys, 10 and 6.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you have your hands full. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of baseball.
So what inspired you to create ELIXR Coaching and Consulting?
So many things. I think it was a combination of my personal journey, personal experience, my motherhood story. I think it was witnessing such a tremendous gap in the U.S. workforce to thrive and succeed as a woman, followed by mother. And then, my coaching journey. So as a certified coach and matrescence expert, you become acutely aware to what it means to flourish as a human and how you really can have joy and you really can live a fulfilled life. And so I believe that I could be part of the story to fill the gap in the workforce for women like me, essentially rewriting my experience of motherhood in the U.S. workforce.
What is matrescence? We both
Yeah.
use that word now. We haven't defined it yet, though. I hadn't really heard that word before I met you. So what is it?
It's constantly expanding. In fact, I'm working along with a PhD and advisor now, and we're going to jump into some research in the space of matrescence. So it's fascinating to witness the future of it. But essentially, it was coined in 1973 by an anthropologist named Dana Raphael. And we never had a name to motherhood, this crazy transformation, this existential journey a woman goes through when she becomes a mother. We don't use a word for it, and it has a word. It's matrescence, just like adolescence. We all know that word. We support, we advocate for our children to have the resources. We tell them your body is going to change, your hormones are going to change for years, and we make space so that they can thrive in that experience. Well, women go through an even more significant transformation in a shorter amount of time when they become a mother. Think about it. You bring home a newborn to your house and you've become a mom, but you're not actually a mother yet. You grow into motherhood, and we've never given that journey a name. And so that's matrescence, and it has early motherhood, middle motherhood, later menopausal motherhood, and it never ends. And it happens on a sociological aspect, biological, psychological, economical, relational. Matrescence affects every single aspect of a human because you will never be the same. That woman who gave birth to a child will never go back to that person she was before.
So is matrescence different than what we would say was motherhood?
Matrescence is the journey of motherhood. Motherhood is a state of being. Matrescence is the academically studied and scientifically researched journey of motherhood.
I see. So you're going into businesses and you're working with women going through matrescence and advising them on how this is affecting the business and how they can better show up for work. You talk a little more about that?
Absolutely. So if you look at Coaching, which is through the International Coaching Federation, is who I was trained and certified through. It's grounded in neuroscience and positive psychology, and it gives us the tools and mindsets to flourish in our lives. So I bridge the world of coaching and matrescence education, and I provide embedded programming with inside of companies so that women have the skills and tools and education to thrive. But most importantly, Anthony, they're leaders. The CEO execs, the first line leaders, peers and colleagues all understand that this US workforce was never built for women. Most importantly, was never built for mothers. How can we build organizational empathy and support for half of the workforce that it was never built for? So Matrescence expands not just to the women navigating and going through it, but essentially we're rewiring the workforce to be inclusive of 51% of the population.
Mhm. Now, technically, there is also a term called Matrescence, right?
Yes, it's crazy. So Dana Raphael coined the term doula. Many of us know do you know that word
Yeah,
doula?
we had one.
Yeah. Yes, I did too with both my boys. So Dana Raphael also coined the term matrescence and putrescence, and it's a neuroplastic event any caregiver will go through. We see neuroplasticity on MRI, but men who are most active in their newborn's life also will have cognitive remodeling. So we'll see gray area in their brain and rewiring, and you're attuning to caring for a newborn.
Is dad strength also part of Matrescence, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's power in the brain of any caregiver or parent. And I think you could probably agree that in most companies, we've like deleted the visibility of child rearing and parenthood. So absolutely, there's immense power in a dad who wakes up for the cries in the middle of the night, that's participating in the mental load at home. Absolutely, his brain is expanding and it's immensely gritty and resilient for the rest of his life.
Right, totally. Okay, so we're talking about the workforce not being built to support people going through motherhood or going through matrescence. What are two or three of the biggest things that a workforce can do to have an impact
Mm.
on that?
Yeah, great question. So if you look at the business impact, so right now, 43% of women leave the workforce in the first 5 years of having a child. So for some way, shape, or form, whether it's affordable childcare or maternity leave or cost of living, something is holding her back from staying in the workforce because it wasn't built for dual parents working, right? But for women, if we can retain women and we can overcome the hurdles for disengagement and mental health, we get them into leadership roles. And organizations who have 1 out of 4 C-suite leaders can see 10x profits, but there's a leaky bucket. So that leaky talent bucket really is a huge issue. So if we look at some of the things you can do, it's bringing visibility to motherhood and allowing a whole person into the workplace. I can't tell you how many women I work with. So I also do community group coaching, one-on-one coaching, really, really small amounts. But inside workshops, I did a virtual workshop 3 weeks ago with 640 women. And how many women will put on their calendar personal appointment instead of kindergarten graduation? Like we are hiding such a huge part of ourselves in the workforce. So visibility, I think that is a major part. Flexible work environments and affordable childcare, of course. But the one thing that ELIXR is going after is building organizational understanding of modern motherhood, what's required to be a mom today, and then organizational empathy. Why would they care to make a change? What's the business case, and why should I care as a person? So I believe wholeheartedly matrescence could change the game for women in the workforce.
So, what is the business case?
The business case is getting women into leadership roles. We're seeing a huge leaky gap right around the first rung. So getting women into those first line leadership roles. And most women are carrying the invisible load between home and school and doctor's appointments. And when the kids are sick, it's usually the women taking off. And so getting shared responsibility at home, of course. But the business case is if you can get women into those first line leadership roles, then we get emotional intelligence. We get higher EQ with women in the workforce. The more women leaders we can have social awareness, empathy, the benefit of the power of the mom brain and keeping in those leadership roles can ripple into all facets of the business. But we need more women leaders and we need more visibility to motherhood.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned maternity leave. That's becoming a bigger topic in the corporate world, in America especially. I recently had my own maternity leave, and my wife had her maternity leave. What do you think is the right amount of maternity leave?
If you look at countries like Sweden, which is tremendously pro family, um, not only do they get the first year maternity leave, but up to 8 years of the first child's life, they get 75% workload. They know that happy families are good for business and the economy. And so in the US, we just haven't equated value. We were never, the workforce and infrastructure was never built for that. Um, there's tremendous bonding time to happen in the first year of having child. I think 12 weeks is not enough, most definitely. Imagine finding affordable childcare that will take your 12-week-old, and then you return to work uncomfortable in your clothing, pumping to leaders who have no return to work programs or plans. Could 12 weeks be done effectively if we built return to work programming? Absolutely. Um, I don't know that there's a right time right now, but I think just getting federal mandated maternity leave across the country would be phenomenal. I think the stat is like almost 90% of women return to work within 2 weeks. So if you think about the average worker in America, they get completely nothing, they're unpaid. So anything is better than what we're doing now. And then on the backside, I think if we have flexible return to works and ramp up policies and supportive environments, I think we can actually retain the women on the back end of coming back from maternity leave.
So, like in the capitalistic society that we live in, what do you say to the to CEOs who are saying, hey, how could we possibly afford to have a somebody take off for a year?
Yeah. I mean, what's funny is we look at the ROI of better environments to support moms, and it's there. The stats on flexible work environments. There are so many companies advocating for paid childcare because the numbers don't lie. Statistically, it's you'll make your money back and more. Right now, I believe it's around 213%, up to 213% the salary of a woman who leaves the workforce. So to backfill those positions, right? So imagine the ramp up time to get a new employee up and running and trained. The business case is to keep, retain, and support your current employee always. And then you build loyal, highly engaged, successful women who will move into leadership roles. So it's a really long story that's never been told.
Right. Other than some of the just the obvious logistical challenges when going through matrescence, what are some of the changes that somebody experiences?
Oh man, I spend a lot of time in the identity shifts that happen, especially in the workplace. Think about a woman who's been told her entire life from the ages of 7 to 12 in her adolescence years that act and behave for everybody else outside of yourself. Go make something of yourself, have a career, succeed, get the title, make tons of money. And then, oh, by the way, have a baby. And then when you have this baby, you think it will be additive to your life. And so many women I spend time with, their identity is so heavily tied to career. And then it shifts. You meet a new person when you have this baby, but nobody tells you you'll never be the same. Um, they're not told that maternal instinct is a fallacy, that it will come naturally to you. That's all a lie. That you will learn and grow into motherhood. And so the identity shift in matrescence is probably one of the most pivotal because it really the downstream effects hit in many other places like relationships. When you return to work, your relationships will inevitably change, right? Your time is invariably changing. You have less time to spend with friends and family. You shed friendships in matrescence. And these never end. It's early motherhood, later motherhood, and menopausal, very late motherhood. Um, and the biological effects. So think about fertility journeys now can take years. So you're injecting yourself every day to get pregnant. That's the start of matrescence. You go through pregnancy, have a child, and then you're expected to return to work and be the same person you've been forever. Economical changes. There's the motherhood tax that occurs. Did you know for every child a man has, he will receive a 4% raise in his salary? Every child a woman has will receive a 6% decrease in salary. So you're hit with the motherhood tax you were never expecting. There's unconscious bias in the workplace. Psychological changes happen. There's the good mom mentality that's expected from society. So matrescence can manifest and is so multidimensional, and we just don't share that story. We were meant to mother in villages, and today we're mothering in a pretty individualistic society.
Is the idea behind that tax that a man is perceived to have some positive qualities as a candidate if he has kids, and a woman is perceived to have not negative qualities, but I guess negative like worker qualities.
Yeah, it's funny. I read an article the other day. I can't remember which one it was, but it said the top 4 hiring options are number 1, always a dad. Number 2 is a single man. 3 is a single female. And 4th is a mother.
Yeah.
So those are
Interesting.
the stats of, you can see fatherhood is perceived as a benefit and motherhood is perceived as a tax.
Well, now that I'm a dad, I'm expecting
Yeah.
the recruiters to start
Where,
coming and
where's
knocking.
your salary increase?
Right. Yeah. Where's my tax?
Yep.
Okay. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about your own experience with Matrescence and work. So where were you when your first kid was born in your career?
So I was an account manager and trainer in a pharmaceutical company. And funny enough, I was working inside of OBGYN offices. So I was in women's health, pregnant with my first, and I had my first. And I was
Good place to
still,
be when you're pregnant.
you would think it would be the best place, right?
Yeah.
And it was the biggest shock of my life having a child. I was so unprepared to become a mother, but I was prepared for pregnancy and birth. And then after that, nothing. I had the best stroller. I had the best breast pump. I had the best prenatal vitamins. I had the best OBGYN. I had everything you could imagine. And then all of a sudden I got home, walked to this empty house, and I was like, well, what now? What do
Yeah.
I do now?
Yeah. I mean, there's not that there's not a lot of resources, but to your point, you kind of have to have the experience to know what you're doing, right? Like they kind of just give you a baby at the hospital. You don't you have to watch one video about not shaking them, and that's really the only instructions you're given. And then even with you could read all the books you want, but many people on my show have said the same thing. Like it's really hard to be prepared
Hmm.
for it. So like how do we reconcile that, right? Because it is something that you need to kind of experience to go through to
Hmm.
know how to
Hmm.
do. But at the same time, there are a lot of resources out there. So how do you reconcile those two things?
Yeah. You know, I'll challenge that. I think that you have to go through it to experience it because there's no other way, right? Right now, I can tell you all the things, but it's going to be different. Yes, all of our journeys are unique wholeheartedly, but we are all unified as parents. We've all gone through some way, shape, or form, right? And so there's some things we know invariably will change, period, like for certain. So I believe I spent 10 years in the rare disease space and how many patients were seeking diagnosis and the right specialist. And we would spend years in a commercial strategy space trying to get disease state awareness out, just period. And these were to clinical experts who had no idea how to diagnose or the protocols in this specific disease state. I believe matrescence is the awareness we've never had. So imagine a place where you're at your OBGYN office or you've gone to a workshop within your organization and somebody has told you, hey, here's the 30 different ways you as a woman and human will change in parenthood. When you walk through the door, here's the 3 things you could do to prepare and support yourself. And then we want different outcomes. We don't want the high numbers of postpartum depression. 1 out of 10 men experience paternal depression, and that's not talked about either. So we want preventative care. I truly do believe that we can change the experience if we expand the definition, if we share matrescence. I think you could probably agree that vulnerability is often a sign of weakness in our society. We don't often share like the hard. You'll probably ask another dad who has a newborn at home, how are you doing? How's everything? Oh, good, good, just a little tired. And they won't share that they were up all night holding their wife's hand while she's sobbing because she can't get the breastfeed latch. They won't share with you that their hair is falling out and they're so stressed between home and work. We don't actually share the authentic side of it. And
Yeah.
that's not fair.
Yeah. I'd like to think that that's changing with like some of the newer generation sharing their feelings more, but I think there's a big problem with men in general not sharing those experiences. I definitely had
Yeah.
those experiences. So hopefully people listening, I did tell you that part of it. Um,
Anthony did share the message
yes,
authentically.
it was
But I think
hard. Yeah.
it's hard and it takes the weight off your shoulder because think about how many moms and dads are at home thinking there's something wrong with me and I'm failing at this. I'm not good. And you talked about what was it like for me with my first. I was so successful. I thought that I was completely failing at motherhood. There was something wrong with me. I internalized it and then I didn't talk about it to anybody. So that's what prevention does too. It says you're not alone.
So what was it like your transition from worker to working parent?
Hmm. What was it like from worker to worker parent? I definitely went back to work too soon because it felt comfortable. I felt really safe at work. I knew who I was there. I knew how I could perform, and I went back early with both boys. Um, you have so much control in a lot of parts of work in your life as an individual, and you have no control as a parent, right? I also was around people all the time, and it was so lonely being in my home with a newborn. Nobody told me how lonely that was going to be. Um, so yeah, I think shifting from work to at home was my entire world turned upside down. And then returning to work, the guilt associated with I'm not home with my baby, and then when you're home, I'm not at work, and it was just a constant toggle back and forth of the unknown and heavy weight.
That's a big part of it they don't really talk about either. Is like you don't get to see your kid that much after a while, right? Because even me, I work from home, and even still, my daughter's at daycare from
Mm-hmm.
8:30 to 4:30, and so it's a big challenge, and it's something that's I think isn't talked about enough.
Couldn't agree more. One of the things I try and focus that I've made a shift in my life is being really intentional with the time that I do have. So, instead of saying I was a bad mom, I wasn't with my kid all day and I worked and I have all these dreams to build this business, I have a lot of dimensions of who I am as a person. And motherhood is one part of it, right? And I also love all the other parts of me. And so when I am with my kids, which is probably the most important part of my identity, I am really intentional and present. So I am, laser focused. Friday nights and bedtime during the week are like my church. I am unwilling to sacrifice those moments, which means when they go to bed, I might do a little bit more work, or I might be working and miss the afternoon time when they're at camp, or we have a nanny or family with them or whatever. And I won't feel guilty about that, right? Because you're always going to have competing priorities. And I have a lot of things that are going to take over priorities of others during certain times of my life.
So, in what ways has becoming a parent changed the way you approach your career?
Mm. I want to build this business showing the world, showing moms, entrepreneurs, business owners that we are so highly effective in a shorter amount of time so that I can be with my children more. So I will fully commit and be very present in my work during certain hours of the day so that I can spend maybe some more time at home with my kids. Um, and what I mean by that is I came from a world where activity was productivity, and I want productivity to be productivity. I don't want it to be the amount of hours I give in a day. And so when I build a team and this builds out over the next several years and we're in many different organizations, I envision a team where they're all parents, mothers, spouses who are aligned in this mission and also get to have presence in both places. The other thing that has changed for me now is I really do seek the good and the joyful moments in business and at home. I don't think we reflect enough on all the things that went right in a day or a week or a month. And I make that such a huge part of my life and my family's life.
Do you think about the way your kids see your career, the way you approach work?
Yeah, I mean, I want them to be exposed on all the different things we spend our time. We have really can't I have a 10-year-old now, right? So middle schooler. We have really candid, deep conversations, and he asks great questions and I ask him good questions. I ask how he perceives and sees the things that we're doing. Um, I want to be really proud of all the things we spend our time outside of our family. We include them in those conversations. It's funny. The other day, my son said to me, maybe in high school or when I'm a little older, I'll be a coach at school because I'm a certified coach." I
Yeah.
was like, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And he said, "Well, like when I'm on the pitching mound and I'm not doing good, I take deep breaths and I talk to myself nicely." And he's like, "I think my friends could probably do that too." So they're watching us and they're
Yeah.
listening to us.
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool to hear.
Yeah. I like that. What other secrets to success for a busy working parent would you share?
Oof. I design my day every single day. It is like a game changer. And what I mean by that is before I open my eyes, before I look at my husband, before I check my email, before I do anything, I decide who do I want to be today? What do I want to give today? And what do I want to receive? I really do think about how do I want that day to go? And I do it day to day. For example, it might be, I know we have a busy calendar today. I want to be really present at dinner with the kids. I'm going to make sure that my phone is in another room. Or I've got a huge workshop, virtual engagement with 700 people, and that's going to go awesome. I'm going to give so many great insights and nuggets. And then I'm going to receive, pride and guidance or whatever it is. I really think about that day and how do I want it to go before the day even starts. I think so many of us wake up and get to our phones right away. So many of us wake up and jump out of bed. And granted, I know many people are juggling toddlers and newborns and have no time for themselves. This can happen in like 60 seconds, right? I think we can all carve out 30 seconds. Just think about really briefly, how do you want to feel today? Like, how much more better of a day would it be if you just decided how you wanted to set yourself up for success?
On that note, what time management skills do you have or have you developed since becoming a working parent?
Send all advice to Jess at ELIXR, ELIXR, coaching.com. I'll take anybody's time management skills. That is definitely not my strong suit. I have a strategic advisor and business partner, and I heavily prioritize things that are most urgent, and I try and go down the list by urgency and business needs. Um, but definitely not my definitely not my strong suit. I
Yeah.
think you can attest, right? Like some weeks your kids are sick and up all night, and it's just like, what's the bare minimum I can get done today to survive? Um,
Yeah,
yeah, but
absolutely.
it changes day to day.
Yeah, it's like it's weird because you just have less time, right? So there's less things you could do. But then I also think there is some truth to if you want something done, give it to a busy person because I feel like you just start to crank stuff out and you get in some ways you get more done, but I don't know, the time's flying.
Yeah. I think, I'm definitely that CEO brain versus like worker bee brain. So I'm always thinking big picture. And then when it gets down to the time and day to go do those things and the granular deck building or data, that's definitely not my strongest suit. So
Yeah.
I end up doing the things I really want to do, the creative outlets, the people outlets. And so I really having a priority list and I rank it on urgency is the thing that helps me the most.
Right. Okay, we're gonna move into the final segment called Jess's Advice Corner. So I'm gonna ask you for some advice on a few topics. You ready?
Okay, you got it.
What advice do you have for somebody who is about to be a parent but still has a career they want to focus on?
If you are a woman and you're family planning, read the book Matrescence by Lucy Jones. It's a phenomenal read. Invest in some sort of coach or therapist and have them lined up before you give birth. When you go to register for the stroller and the baby toys and the diapers and you decorate the nursery, think about what you're going to need after you have a baby. Talk to your manager about a return to work plan. What are they going to do to support you? Um, Set yourself up for success and also give yourself grace and compassion because you'll never be that same person again, but you will be better and grittier and more resilient. And for dad, same thing. Make sure that you're set up for whatever you need to fill your bucket and divide responsibilities in the home. 50-50, hands down, everybody will thrive.
Hmm. What advice do you have for self care?
Self care is a word that I just struggle with. I choose to use the term well being. I do exercises where you draw a battery and you think about all the things that recharge you and fill you up and all the things that drain you. And keeping a pulse on how you can keep your battery charged. Is it a micro moment of meditation? Is it deep breathing throughout the day? Is it sitting in your car and screaming? Is it a 10-minute walk? Maybe it was working out before kids and now you just don't have the time for the hour at the gym. And so it's 4-minute walk. I use the phrase micro moments a lot. So 30-second increments, 5-minute increments, 10-minute increments, whatever you're capable of doing. But just know that you're a human being. You're not a robot and you have a battery that needs to be recharged and certain things you can't control that will always be draining you. So for me, for example, I keep my calendar pretty clear. We don't do like a ton of social engagements with friends and all that kind of stuff. We keep it pretty limited. And that just works for our family. So overscheduling is probably my biggest quote unquote self-care. I don't overschedule.
Right. That's a good one. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Best advice that I ever received is nobody will love you more than you'll love yourself. And that changed my life.
Love it. What advice would you give to your former self?
You're trying your best, girlfriend. You got this. You're doing a great job.
Still good advice, right?
Yeah.
Okay, last question. So, by the time this episode comes out, my daughter will be a little over 1 year old, probably about 13 months old. So, what advice do you have for me as the father of a 13-month-old daughter?
Hmm. When you talk, look her in the eyes, put your phone away, and actively listen. When you feel your mind wandering and you start thinking about all the things you have to do, remember that she'll always know you were looking in her eyes and you were listening to her.
That's a good one. The phone's got to go, I think. All right, Jess. Well, this has been a great conversation. Where can people go to connect with you or learn more about you? Anything that you'd like to promote or share?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn, Jess Ringgenberg. You can go to my website, which is ELIXR with one I, because there's only one I when you're a woman dealing with motherhood and career, elixircoaching.com. And those are probably the best platforms. If you're curious on how we can make an impact inside your org, or you just want to hear what we're doing inside community spaces, I'm pretty active on both of those platforms.
And you do one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and corporate work. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Jess Rittenberg, ladies and gentlemen. Jess, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Hold on, let me say your name again. I said your name wrong. Um, Jess Ringenberg, ladies and gentlemen. Jess, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.